Today we're going to be looking at why do people collect action figures? In the world we live in today, the popularity of being a nerd or nerd culture is at an all-time high. We all have our favorite movies or TV shows that now offer loads of content and products for the audiences they provide for. Toy collecting has become a large community of collectors who share similar passion for items that relate to their topics of interest. To begin my study, I conducted several interviews with local toy collectors to help me answer the question, why do people collect toys?
Collect figures from certain TV shows and movies.
I mainly collect He-Man, Masters of the Universe figures, Glyos, which are action figure series that my dad makes, different variety of vintage toys, Rock Lords, Fisher-Price Adventure People, Mark's Dinosaurs, and other random stuff.
80s pop culture. Started out nostalgically like with movies. Growing up, I was into movies and wrestling.
Around 1995. That was when Star Wars came back out, and not having internet, that's where I went nuts.
Toys ever since I was a little kid, just because my dad's made toys as his job, so then I was kind of always exposed to that and always had toys throughout my childhood, even when I was really little.
Cards when I was about the age of like 5. I'd start buying trading cards, and then when I was 7, I started collecting He-Man, and I would try to be a good as kid as possible to have He-Man, get a He-Man every time we went to the store. So I started at the age of 7, and I really got heavy into collecting when Nintendo became big because I wanted everything. And so that became like my major obsession, was Nintendo and He-Man, and it never stopped with the gaming. I collected games my whole life. So.
Far back as I can remember, I used to get action figures as rewards for doing things as a kid, and just grew up always going down the toy aisle of certain Walmarts and Target.
Probably my father who started that one for me, especially with collecting. He was a train collector for most of his life, and he started when he was 16. And he worked very hard to get everything that he acquired.
Well, my parents, for one, for buying them for me in the
Younger
first
in the
place,
80s, a lot of kids collected something. And so if it was coins or stamps or baseball cards, so it was a lot of your friends when you were younger. And then when you get older, your family starts to see all the stuff you have, and they kind of feed into it by buying you something when they see something when they're out and about. Even your friends get into it because they know you like it, and they'll send you a picture. I got people that send, you probably have the same thing, I got people that send me pictures all the time of places they are, and they're like, do you have this? Do you need this? Have you seen this?
It was my dad, just because he is a sculptor and artist and he makes action figures for a living. And then growing up around that, there was just always toys around in every room, and it's just, ever since then until now, I've always had toys.
A lot of good friends now because of collecting, or because I collect, or I have the knowledge, and there's a lot of great people out there that do the same thing, and I'm happy to say that they're friends and some are family.
Finding something that I've never seen a lot of the time. You get a bit jaded as far as like how exciting something is because you see it so much. But then there's that time where you find something you haven't seen in 30 years. Like, there it is. It makes your whole day.
I
Carry it around.
Finding new things, I guess, being out in places and not thinking you're gonna find something, and stumbling across it and being like, oh shit. So you found something cool.
The collecting community, before internet, you didn't hear of it. If you did hear of it, it was through, you had to actually have a conversation with people. Internet has definitely changed the world.
Well, it has increased just because I think there's something going on with pop culture becoming more mainstream, and likely just a little bit of people not giving a care care about what people think anymore about having different things.
It's easily more socially acceptable now. You're not considered a hoarder or a nut or crazy.
Nerd.
A nerd. A nerd is big because it used to be something that you'd be considered a nerd for. Now people come over and see your stuff and they're flat jealous, and they, next thing you know, they're building a little shelf of the 5 things they could put together that they're collecting, and then they'll have 10 on the next time you see it, and then next time there's 15 wrestling figures up there, and it just goes from there.
Save up a lot of money.
Pick something that you're gonna like and start small, because once you start collecting things, it'll get out of control.
If you grew up watching G.I. Joe or watching Masters of the Universe, and you think that these are going to be worth something in the future, this and that, don't think of it like that. Because you have to have a passion for what it is.
Directions. I'd always recommend sticking to one thing. Like, if I wanted to get my, all my He-Men back from when I was a kid, I went after those first, and I collected them until I got everything that I wanted, and then I moved on to something else. And I think that's a little bit easier. That way you can focus. You can find yourself in a situation where you're buying this, and nothing meshes. It's going to take a long time to build a really nice collection when you're buying very random.
Star Wars is a good one to say just no to at any point, just because George Lucas will get you.
A collector is different than the average person because a collector has an eye to see value in almost anything. From where the average person will walk through a place and not notice maybe something, say we're at an estate sale or you're at a garage sale or you're even out in public, a collector can find the value in almost anything.
I think your mindset is different. You walk into places, and when you're looking around, you're just constantly on that, in flea markets and places, what if I find this? What if I find that? You know what you're looking for.
Going to Target, we are different because we go to the toy section first, while normal people, will go get their things and then maybe go down to the toy aisle. We want to hit that toy aisle first. That's how we
Toy
do.
collectors and people that collect seem to know lots of information about stuff that nobody else seems to give a shit about. You can rattle off nonsense information for days on end, and it never seems to stop.
And you're wondering, why does this guy know anything about that? Why would he possibly know that? And it's because collectors have this, something in their head where they want to know almost everything about everything. Because that way they can share the information with somebody if it's something about their collection, or they can just know if they see it in public, hey, I should pick one of those up because I know so-and-so likes this. I know how much they sell for. I know what I could get for it if I want to trade somebody, because I think it's just something that you're just more perceptive as a collector.
Well, usually when just people walk in, they kind of get that big head like, oh, okay. They just kind of look the room around, and, it goes, either people get silent, like they don't know what to say, or people are like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And then they got to look at every little thing in the room.
Well, usually when they see it, they get their phones out and snap it.
Just people like to stare. They like to look. You walk in, you're like, you can't help but bounce around the room because there's stuff on all the walls.
Normally, and then they ask me about every single thing for a long time. And then they ask you how much it's worth, because they always want to know how much all your stuff's worth. It's worth what somebody would give you, I guess. I don't know.
Usually it's pretty positive. I've never really ran into anybody that's that judgmental about
Because
it.
a lot of people have something they're passionate about, if it's cars or whatever. For us it's toys, and so they're a little bit surprised at times by all this amount of stuff you have.
With the internet especially, being able to share what your collection is and everything like that, and selling it, it's a pretty serious deal.
Yeah, I'd say it's been a positive. It's introduced me to a lot of people that I probably wouldn't have known.
Meeting some great people that I probably wouldn't have even had in my life.
it's opened some doors for me and some things where we've traveled a little bit in this business and got to see some stuff and go see some really cool collections. And
it helped me get into a lot of different things because, there is a train of influence that you follow when you collect stuff. Like, you get into one thing and that leads you to something else, and then it's just kind of a chain reaction of things you discover.
It has taught me a lot about just the market in general in the world. Toy collecting is a very popular thing, but it's much like anything else. You're investing in something that needs to, retain its value. And
usually that leap happens when you make the leap from modern toys to vintage toys, because you just start to discover all these oddball things, and it's nuts because it was just a different time of when toys were being made. It's not like now. It's very, very polar opposites and levels of creativity and what these companies were allowed to do in terms of, creating characters and doing things that were unique that people hadn't done before.
Going to the store and just buying an action figure just takes you back to a simpler time. Same feeling I get when I get a good grade on a test, or
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's here.
I really get excited, but then I'm like, oh, where am I going to put that? And does something else have to come down because of this?
You're adding another character, you're adding another thing, and with how it works nowadays, you see this stuff months and months before online, before it's ever in your physical hands. By the time you get it, sometimes you're sitting there like,
I'd probably put it up front and stare at it on the shelves for the good first couple of weeks till it goes to its permanent place.
I've seen it for months, but here it is finally in my hand, and you get to appreciate it for that and not through a...
And then for some reason I talk about it the most when anybody comes over, even if it's not even a big deal of an item at all. It's, oh, look at this Demolition Man Kenner figure. I was in Sioux City, Iowa, and I had just taken a train ride there, and he sent me a picture of it, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me! There it is. It's in its box. It's right there," because it was a pre-order in 2015 for the 30th anniversary, and you didn't have a chance, really, to get it, on the click. So he sent me a picture of it, and I remember Jennifer going down there. I called her and I said, "Hey, the Kid Logic DeLorean's at 13th Street," and she's like, "Okay, I'll go during lunch." And she went down there and picked it up, and man, that was the longest train ride home in my life.
And this is something that I had a lot of fun with as a kid, and they're expensive now. You don't see them every day. This is the first time I've seen one of these in person probably in 35 years.
One time, I found, I was looking at this figure online. It was a Darth Maul action figure, and I could only find it for $40 to $70. And I went into Toys from the Past, the store Hayden works at, found it there in its box for only $15. So, that was a really good opportunity to flip an item, but, I still have it to this day just to see if it will go up in value.
Remember when we went to Des Moines that first time, we were both really into the Fisher-Price adventure people, and I remember we were hitting spots and, yelling down the Fisher-Price, I can't find any, and finding that safari set in that bag. It was hidden, and we pull it out, and I'm like, oh, finally, I wanted to find one of these, and I don't know, just having it. It's funner too, finding stuff when you're on a trip. Ordering stuff online is the most uneventful and boring way to collect. Go to the store, go run down the aisles and piss other collectors off. Like that's the fun of it, is the chase. Doing it on your phone, like you're just as fast as your thumbs.
To conclude, I have established that there are two types of collectors based on my interview. There are thrill of the hunt collectors who initially collect, their favorite items, but as they begin collecting, they, slowly fill in the gaps of their collection. And after that, they go after the more obscure items like the international releases and hard to find like paint variants and stuff like that. From an outsider's perspective, this person looks like they waste a bunch of money, but to them, it's pure satisfaction knowing the differences between these variants. And to move forward, the second type of collector would be the nostalgic collector. This would be a person who collects because of nostalgia from their youth. As a kid, they may have been obsessed with different things. Uh, as kids, we go through these phases of being super into He-Man, G.I. Joe, Star Wars, whatever it may be, and it can last for weeks, years, and some of us never grow out of it. And if we do, a lot of us like to return to it later in life. And for these reasons, this collector uses the items they collect as a time to just take a sit back and relax and remember a time where things weren't as complex or complicated as they are now. All of us have one thing in common, and that is that we collect something that we are passionate about, whether it's something to do with our childhood or something we just got into recently. In the end, people will end up collecting toys and action figures, most likely until the end of time.